have GTM 3 in possibly 1 day or possibly 2 days with exercises. So we'll get you up and running, ground team member, UDF, you seasoned pilots that have UDF and need it renewed, sign up over there and let me know, and we'll get together and get you renewed. Or you newer pilots that are coming on board that have to have UDF training, let me know, sign up, and we'll get you a class. And I think it's easier to work it that way rather than to put a class together and then try to get people to sign up, because the last few times we've done that, only 1 or 2 people have signed up. So if we get a list of people who need things, you can let me know, and I can look up what you need, and we can start working on your squitters to get everything you need to start that class, and then we'll put something together over at 133 and get you up and running. Really not a lot else to tell you. I want to get our folks up and trained because, you know, we're kind of behind with the COVID, and with group and wing, the training really, I mean, there's not a lot going on for wide open like we used to do Warrior Weekend, where you could go in for a weekend and get all of the GTM training that you needed, or UDF and stuff. So I want to get our squadron up and running. GTM, I want to get some ground team members qualified, because if you're not going to fly on a mission, we need you on the ground also. Like she was saying, get your driver's license. It's pretty simple. Just download your driving record, and then you submit it on e-services, and they'll get you'll be able to be a driver at least for us. So, but get some basic ground team member training, and also maybe some drone training, technician-wise, or even if you want to go all the way to pilot, we want to try to coincide that together like the fire departments are doing, you know, using drones more. When we first started out with our squadron, it was more of a red cell thing only. It wasn't anything to do with search and rescue or anything like the fire departments are doing with drones, but red cells kind of went to the side, and we're looking more at search and rescue, or doing pictures, or even talking about fire watch with drones like we do with the aircraft. So that's what I'm doing. I got to sign up over here. If you have any questions, get with me after the meeting, and I'll be able to talk to you about that. But if you do need renewals and stuff, just let me know. Even if it's 2 people, I'll be willing to come in and we'll work you through a renewal. Question? Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you that are new, first of all, how many EMTs do we have in here? Okay, EMT. We have people with medical training that are great ground team people. So it's good to work with these people, CJ. You can hook up with these guys and make sure you can get on board there. The other thing is we talking a lot of vegetable soup and CAP. UDF is urban direction finding. So let's say there's an air crew flying around and the air crew locates or thinks they've located a beacon. What you want to do is you work with your ground team, your comm people, and the ground team actually is able to go, if the pilot can't land, if it's not an airport where the beacon's going off, then the ability for a ground team to go in and locate that beacon and do exactly what is expected of them by CAP, to go ahead and turn off the beacon and notify the correct people, that needs to be done. It's a particular process. So most pilots should be UDF qualified so they can land in an airport, because you know how many accidents are close to airports? Lots. So the biggest thing you want to do is make sure that you understand what's required, do the ground team training, make sure you get a chance to go on the exercises. Mike did a heck of a job. Ryan and I went out and trained with him on UDF, and it was great. It was well communicated. We used aircraft communications, van communications with an MRO that was back here at the base. So we had an opportunity to try all of those resources and make sure we could connect. So, okay, now our aerospace education officer, Alex.
Testing out the cable. All right, good evening, everyone. Before I start, I just wanted to say education really takes place on this side of the room. All I can do up here really is present information. Thanks. And so what I can do here is present information, but if y'all can help me out a little bit, where if you can contact me, you can find me in the my email from the Member Search Needs Services. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So if you can find me and let me know if there's something you wanted some more elaboration on, something you weren't sure about, something you're just plain curious about, because something that I would like to avoid happening is either I take a topic that's kind of maybe goes way over somebody's head, or something that you already know and you kind of just drift off and are not interested. So if there's any way that I can improve the quality of the aerospace education content that you see here at these meetings, please reach out. I want to make it interesting for you, and then it'll also be interesting for me as well. So today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about a particular event that happened. Has anybody here heard of Korean Air Flight 801 before? Okay, so this might not be 100% new to everybody, but I did want to illustrate one point. This was at Warrior Weekend 2018. I'm not an airplane pilot, I'm not a fixed wing pilot, but when I saw this console sitting on the table, one thing stuck out, and that was this label. You probably can't all read that. I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading on the slides, but that's, you know, all you folks that are used to don't read from the slide. I'm going to do that just to illustrate points here. This one here I kind of want to illustrate. It says, do not abuse power. So I didn't actually know that that actually meant this. And I thought it was a really good fitting tone for the overall tone of this presentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. It's 1997, August. Korean Airlines are coming in from the south. They're coming in from the west, trying to land at Guam Airport. But what ends up happening is that they end up crashing right into Nimitz Hill, which is just a few miles southwest of the airport. Now, what I want to go into is what went wrong, but actually the more interesting part was what didn't go wrong. What didn't go wrong was that it wasn't a malfunction. The vehicle was the aircraft was a perfect working order. The crew were trained. In fact, the pilot had decades of experience, a very, very seasoned pilot, along with his first officer and his flight engineer. Just to set the scene, we had the VOR located at Nimitz Hill. Does anybody not familiar with the VOR? Okay, so case in point, the VOR is not at the airport, it's actually at Nimitz Hill. So VORs are really good at telling you where they are, just to let you guys know. And about 2.5 miles distance separated Nimitz Hill from the Guam site, from the Guam airport. The pilot was very, very experienced, however, they were fatigued. And what happens with fatigue? What happens to your judgment? Do you get better at making decisions? Who here gets better at interpreting information when they're tired? Okay. Who gets better at anything when you're tired? Okay. Sleeping. Yeah, really good at not piloting, yeah. So I want to go into some quick statistics. From 1988 to 1998, there's a number that was a measurement called the loss rate for aircraft. Now, the loss rate for aircraft is basically per million departures, how many losses were there of the aircraft. For Korea Airlines, so we're going to compare 0.27 for United Airlines, but for the same time period, Korea Airlines was at 4.79, 17 times higher. Now, I started this presentation by saying this pilot was very experienced. It was a Heritage. I believe it was a 747. Nothing out of the ordinary, but in perfect mechanical working order. So why do they have a 17 times higher loss rate? Well, we're going to talk about what ended up happening after the investigation. But to do that, I'm going to talk about what's called mitigated speech. So is anybody here, actually, raise your hand if anybody here is prior military or served in a capacity that had a rank structure like that. Okay. So the way that you speak to a subordinate may not necessarily be the way that you speak to your commanding officer. Does that sound pretty reasonable? What about your commanding officer's commanding officer's commanding officer? What about then, if you even get a chance to talk to them directly? So we're going to talk a little bit about mitigated speech. So Korea has a very different way that it has what's called a power distance. Power distance meaning a seasoned person, somebody of a higher stature in that organization, society, in that unit. The way that you speak to somebody many levels above you for Korea is much more pronounced than it is in America. America has actually some of the least power distance there is. If I'm speaking to an experienced pilot, calling them by their first name may not be out of the ordinary. However, in Korea, if I were to speak to an experienced pilot and use their first name, I might actually get slapped. And I'm not kidding. There are incidents, and it does happen, where you have pilots actually striking first officers and flight engineers for being out of line, even if they weren't informal about it. And that's the power distance that I want to talk about today. So to give a quick diagram of kind of the different levels of mitigated speech we're going to look at, I'm going to read these off, so sorry for the guys in the back, this won't be in our chart. I'll read them off real quick. So the first and most direct way to communicate something, we're going to call a command. The command, turn 30 degrees right. Simple, quick, easy to understand. Whether you're fatigued or whether you're alert, it gets that message across perfectly. Now as we go down and be more subtle about it, we have what's called the crew obligation. I think we need to deviate right now, implying that us together, I think that maybe we should probably deviate right about now. If you're going to go even more in that direction, we go to what's called a crew suggestion. Hey, let's go around the weather. Let's go together around the weather. Do you see where this is going? Even further below, a query. What direction would you like to deviate? Implying that I haven't made any decision and the decision is still in your hands to make, of course, sir or ma'am. Which direction would you like to deviate? So this is even more suggestive and less direct. Below that, we have the preference. I think it would be wise to turn left or right. I just think that. I'm not telling you to do this or that, sir or ma'am, but I think it would be wise to do that. And then at the very, very bottom, we have what's called a hint. That return at 25 miles looks mean. Yep, very mitigated, as mitigated as you can get. A hint. So, for example, Captain Denning, if you were flying a plane and I was your passenger, and I would say, oh, that weather outside looks pretty nasty, you'd be like, yeah, it does. And then but what if it was me trying to say, well, our visibility is bad, we probably need to deviate 30 degrees. How are you supposed to interpret that, especially if you're tired? And this was really what the problem with the investigation found, was that because of this mitigated speech, if I was in this culture, in this very, very deep power distance index dynamic culture, I've said all I can to say. I've said all I can say to you. I basically said this. This is what I said in my head. And I can't go any less formal than that because the culture is embedded so strongly in me that I cannot get anything more direct than that. So what we found was that, the study in 1997 found was that the captains piloting the plane overwhelmingly issued commands because to the flight engineer and the first officer, they were in that culture subordinate to the captain. They overwhelmingly issued commands. Commands are direct, easy to understand. However, first officers, they found overwhelmingly hinted. Hinting is the least efficient way, especially if you're fatigued, to convey information. If you're in a flight crew, what's more important, being polite or being safe and avoiding emergencies? I don't think that's going to be difficult for us to decide that. And they found that the crashes were actually far more likely when the captain was actually flying, when the highest ranking person in that organization, most prestigious person there, was actually in control of the aircraft. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If you had, let's say, an apprentice flying the plane, the commander or the person with the most prestige would have no problem saying, turn 30 degrees here. No, do it. However, the other way around, he must know what he's doing or she must know what she's doing. She's in charge. She's the highest ranking person. I'm not going to say anything, or even if I do, it'll be very mitigated. And this is what they kept running into. So South Korea, we talked about this. Number 2, highest power distance index. And this is why we have this issue here. Korean language is receiver-oriented, up to the listener to interpret the message. Now, if somebody's hinting at you or being passive with you, saying, "Oh yeah, that last donut was great," after you're wiping your mouth, like, you know, they go, "Oh yeah, wow, I sure love donuts. Sure wish I had one of those." You go, "Well, why didn't you say anything? You could have split it in half. You could have both had." But if you're tired or if you're fatigued, your ability to interpret that message is very, very hindered. And that's why we have these two problems. We have these two items that alone wouldn't necessarily be a problem become a problem. We have the power culture with the listener-oriented speech, and then we have the fatigue and the urgency of needing to do something quickly and being able to think logically and critically in time-critical situations. While fatigued, unfortunately, doesn't work. For the Korean language, they have no fewer than 6 levels of formality, just to give you an idea of how ingrained this power structure is. Now, this is an excerpt from the flight log of the last few moments of Korea Air Flight 801. Don't you think it rains more in this area here? This is literally what he said. Well, he said it in Korean, but translated. It would be odd if he would say that and then they wouldn't understand. Anyway, so what is this first officer doing?
Hinting.
And how effective is hinting? So what's the first officer trying to say?
This is some nasty weather. Maybe you should turn around or go around it.
Captain, you're making a VOR approach, and the light and the guides, the glide slope is down, and it's rainy, stormy weather. We should probably go around, or we should deviate, or something. And then, just 4 minutes later, the flight engineer chimes in. Captain, the weather radar has helped us a lot. I'm trying to make this. You can't make this. Unfortunately, this is horrible. And if we were talking about, a Abbott and Costello skit, this would be much more humorous than it is. But this is really what we're getting from in this tape here. So, another hint. The captain, who's tired. Yeah, they are very useful. Did the captain understand what they were trying to tell him?
Possibly. You may have just wanted to land. You go to bed.
So now we have the altitude alert. They're approaching Nimitz Hill and they can't see it. They're within about 3 miles of the airport and they have no visual. None. First officer has upgraded his statement. Let's make a missed approach. What type of statement is that? Crew suggestion. He has upgraded 2 full levels, but still not quite there yet. They're about to hit the hill. They're about to crash, and they still cannot find the way to say, go around, go around. The first officer repeats it again. Not in sight. Missed approach. And at 15:42, 23 seconds, they say, go around, go around. They finally say the thing that they needed to say. But unfortunately, 2.5 seconds later, they hit the hill. By the time they say what needed to be said, it was already too late. The crash investigation team found that if they had upgraded their statement from a hint to what they should have said, at 15:24, there would have been enough time to divert, go around, and mitigate this disaster.
So is it the fault of the crew or the captain? Or
It's harder than that. It's tough. It's tough to say. Could you chalk it up to incompetence? Could you chalk it up to, well, you should have just communicated it clearly? Is it that simple?
No, it's a cultural thing.
So here's what we ended up doing. In 2000, David Greenberg was brought in, a Westerner, from Delta Airlines. and revamped the whole process, whole procedure, made English the standard of aviation. Not only that, Korean flight engineers were trained with Western crews. They actually spent flight time with Western crews in order to understand the much more flattened power distance index that we have here in the United States. And they were actually able to see, what, you guys just call each other Bob and Steve? Yeah, that's his name, Bob, that's Steve. Hey, nice to meet you. That's something that they needed to experience and understand, and how efficient the communication becomes when you don't have that power distance between the people in the cockpit. It freed them of their cultural bonds, and it allowed them to understand that we're not trying to be rude, we're not trying to be disrespectful or dishonor you in any type of way. We just want to land, we want to take off, fly, and land safely. And that's the bottom line. So since then, since 1999, Korea Airline safety record is spotless. They're a good standing member of what's called the SkyTeam Alliance, a very prestigious organization, and they even received an award for how quickly they turned that around. After this transformation, the training didn't stop. No crew was ever let go for lack of training. All crew, Korean air crew, were trained to be fluent in English, and these problems were averted. It's almost like overnight, really. The transformation happened when they understood this power distance index. So sometimes safety, especially aviation safety, has nothing to do with the plane. It has everything to do with the people in control of the plane. So just want to end with this particular note. I thought it was pretty fitting. I try to make these talks around 10 minutes for a 12 to 15 minute window. I don't know if I'm over time, I probably don't. But if anybody has any questions regarding this or any other topic, especially as of last month, I switched over from the Air Force to Space Force. So if anybody has any questions regarding that kind of stuff, I'm here for you, answer questions. And if anybody has questions about these types of things, these are also I'd like to have them interactive. So if anybody wants to raise their hand in the middle of the talk, please let me know, and then we can work on that topic. I try to put in a little bit of extra time for some questions. Does anybody have any questions about this topic? Okay, thanks.
Okay, Doug is on vacation, so just a quick note, and I have talked to a few of you about flight training. So if you are a pilot who is somewhere in this midst as far as pilot training, or you are interested in training as a pilot, there's a whole process, there's a lot of record upload, but this is what I want you to take away. Once you start uploading documents, your pilot documents like your medical, your log, the things that you'll see that are required, this is who you need to talk to. These are the IPs that we have. Doug is our training IP, and we have check pilots Les Cox, Dave Botany, and Chad Grondal, and both Mo Hall and Steve Balsam are now Form 91 pilots, so when you're ready to become a mission pilot, you can be checked out by those two. On top of that, Tom Seymour is going to be becoming an IP. He's recovering from hand surgery and is likely coming back next week. So we'll have a lot more resources to help pilots move along in the process and become active in a lot of the missions that have to do with flying. And that's, between flying and ground and what we have going on, we want to make sure that you have the opportunities, and if you get stuck, do call one of us and let us know how we can help and get things moving along for you. Okay, next. Okay, Earl, where are you? You want to talk about the airplane? Yell.
We haven't heard anything back on it yet, but we're in pretty good shape. We got hours on. We've all gone through recent 100 hours.
It's a great time for airplanes. It just seems like it's taken us a while to keep our airplanes that we have people trained in available. So now 6.5 is here, and if you also are a 182 pilot, you need time. Pueblo also has 738 that we have access to as well. Okay, it's really important to follow the cleaning procedures that have to do with when you train or when you fly O-rides, specific process to keep them clean for the turnover of the aircraft and the headsets for the kids. So everybody should be aware of that when they are training in aircrew flights or whether they're flying with cadets or teachers. Okay, next. Okay, this is what we have coming up. Might fly a couple of rides, which I mentioned. Steve and the gang are doing UAS training on the 10th. There may be some aircrew training, MRO flights on the 10th. We'll see. These are people that have already done ground training. Mission observer ground training is in 133 on the 17th. The knots and buttons get in the aircraft and practicing. Air Academy, we're looking at, this is a date they feel like they can have their kids ready. They've got 25 kids that have not been flown in O-rides, but we'll try and run them as best as we can around what we have as far as training flights. Ground training, we don't know for sure. Mike thought it would be April, and there was supposed to be another 300, 400 class, ICS class, but I don't have dates from Wing on that. Next. Oh, if you have any classes that you want to sign up for, this is probably a good time. Never mind, you can tell. Okay.
Okay, can y'all hear me okay? All right.
Yep,
So let's see if I can, this is kind of a challenge here.
it is.
So what's new in IT? I'm the IT officer, by the way. As of November 1, the Pikes Peak calendar will be moved from its current location to the Pikes Peak SharePoint site. That's the members area. If you go to the Pikes Peak website, over in the right-hand blue bar, you'll see something called members. So you click on that, you can click on SharePoint, and poof, you're there after you log in. Functionality will remain the same, plus we get some other goodies by doing this. You'll still register for classes there, just like you do now. PPS events will be there, as they are now. Like I said, it does require logging to SharePoint, and I've checked, everybody here, except for the new folks, of course, have logged into SharePoint at one time or another. So it shouldn't be too tough of a challenge. I recommend you save, put a shortcut on your desktop, do whatever you have to do, just to make it automatic and easy for you, because pretty much all of our internal stuff will be here from now on. So the reason we did this is the Pikes Peak public calendar, very little on the calendar relates to the public. It's not, not for general public. We'll still have the external calendar to show our monthly meeting. That's pretty much all that's going to be there, unless we have an air show or something, maybe. We would frequently like to have contact information there on the calendar for the classes and everything. That is considered personally identifiable information, PII. Therefore, we have to have it under lock and key, password and username and password. Some of the other benefits, it's going to be basically one-stop shopping for everything, not only Pikes Peak wide, but Colorado Wing wide. So just like you have to log into Colorado Wing members area, it's the exact same login for ours, just one login. One nice thing is currently the IT team has been scheduling all the classes on the calendar. Switching will allow us to give permissions for the ES training team to put things on the calendar as well. It's much easier to manage, far, far easier to manage. And we may be able to interface that with the Microsoft Teams calendar, which we can't do right now. So we're still working on that part. This is the current calendar. You can see the little checkbox thingies up here, which is confusing.